3, 2, 1, and welcome back to Chasing the Racing, episode 51. How we doing, Dominic?
Oh, we're grand, young'un. We're grand. God, that coffee's strong. I love it. Absolutely love a strong coffee.
How's your week?
Oh, yeah, busy enough. I tell you what, oh God, no, I can't mention that. We'll leave that one for a different episode. It's a very important episode, this one, Chrissy.
It is, yeah. We're joined by.
Very
He's kind of like the headmaster of BSB. He's the in charge of race control. Very, very important figure. British motorcycle racing, and obviously very topical as well with these unprecedented times. And everyone,
unprecedented. You can tell we've come off the back of an interview here. We're like fooling around big with unprecedented times.
Obviously, everyone wants to know, what are the possibilities? What could we be looking at for the end of the season? So we thought we'd get the man on himself, the man in control of the BSB Championship, Stuart Higgs, and we're going to put the questions to him. But before we get on with the interview, I see we've got a little bit of road racing news.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I tell you what, thank God for Hutchie and Dean Harrison at the moment, because obviously the last couple of episodes we've just been plucking at straws, haven't we? We've been like raking through, sifting through the rubbish to try and get some good news for you. So, Hutchie is back on with TAS. I was about to say Tyco BMW, but they are no longer. Where did Tyco go? Do we actually know where Tyco went? Now, Tyco was a security firm. Yeah, product or firm? Mm-hmm. Firm that backed TAS Racing, Northern Irish team. And where did they go, Chrissy? Where did the actual I'm not sure. Tyco team go?
Well, the Tyco, the sponsorship, just they'll have like a 5-year deal or whatever, and that came to an end, and obviously time for a new sponsor. And am I right in saying it's pronounced Synetic? But it's spelled with a Q at the end.
We both wrote this down, and we're both looking at each other going, you say the word. No,
usually
you say the word.
In the English language, a Q is always followed by a U, so it's quite it doesn't sort of sit right.
I hate your intelligence sometimes. It does me head in.
I think it's Synetic. Synetic. I think is how you pronounce it. So Synetic BMW, and obviously Ian Hutchinson, for it, like obviously when I interviewed him a few months ago, he was saying that he had his 600 sorted, but the big bike there was still a question mark over it. So obviously
he was
done
out testing. He was out testing on the 600 out when you were out testing.
No.
Hold on.
He wasn't.
He was out. No, he was, man.
A lot of January and February he was out in Almeria, way before I was on the bike. But he was out there on a Sean Muir BMW, I believe. But that was just like a private thing that he was doing himself. When I was there, Touchy wasn't there.
I thought he was back on the McCann's bike.
No, he was riding for Raceways, I think. Raceways Yamaha 600, but I've not seen him out on track this year. He was at the BSB test, the official BSB tests, at I think it was Jerez and Monteblanc or something. But so he has been out. But the big news is that he's got for the big bikes. He's on the back with TAS Racing, and obviously he's had a hell of a lot of success with that team over the years. And we thought TAS Racing weren't going to be doing the roads this year. So
you're right.
Great to see them back.
That has totally gone over my head there.
Great to see them back in the paddock, and obviously we missed it on the rumour mill. Mind, I'm a bit disappointed. Whenever we didn't manage to get that on the rumour mill, but great.
We're losing our touch, Chrissy. The whole world's losing its touch.
And you were saying something about Dean Harrison. I wasn't really aware of it.
Oh, yeah. So Dean Harrison is today, according to Road Racing News, that's where I first saw the news on the old Twitter platform, that he's back. I'm not sure if he's back or the first time racing for Greenall Racing. Now, Angus Greenall, him and his son run the team. Absolutely awesome bikes. Now they run Horst Sager and Derek Shields. Now Horst Sager is an absolute weapon on the thing. He's been on the podium a few times but never quite won it. Now, funny enough, the only man who's been beating him is his now new teammate Dean Harrison. Now the mad thing is Dean Harrison we raced for Silicon Engineering, and they had the most unbeatable bike on the grid. So it is a strange decision. Now, obviously, the last Classic TT for poor Dean didn't go perfectly to plan, shall we say. On the 250, he actually clipped. I think he clipped the wall going into Laurel Bank, so the left beforehand. Now, on the little 250, you literally, where you look is where you go. Mm-hmm. Now, big superbikes, you've got to put your whole body into it. You know yourself, Chris, it's so different to the road. You've got to put your whole body into it, then turn the bike. I think on the little 250, you just turn. It's like something out of a Looney Tune film. Mm-hmm. So, last time he was there, he had had a crash, and I don't know what's really happened on this side of things.
Speaking of Dean Harrison, I actually put a tweet out on our on the @motorbike, like the Chasing the Race on Twitter, trying to tease him into an interview, trying to get him on the show. I think he'd be a really interesting guest, and obviously he's got his own podcast, so he's familiar with the sort of format.
And he started his own business, and he's got 2 kids.
Unfortunately,
he owns loads of houses.
Unfortunately, he hasn't got back in touch. So what I'm going to say is, I think the best tactics is if anyone would like to hear him on, is just to bombard him with tweets and say you need to get on Chasing the Racing, because we would like.
Is there going to be a lawsuit after this?
Get him on. Mate, just before we start, we've actually picked up a sponsor for this episode. And,
hallelujah.
Not in the form of an ordinary sponsor. He's actually an original sponsor, but we'll manage to do a little bit of a deal.
It's a sign of the times, mind, isn't it? Because Chrissy, look at me. Cash is no longer king, my friend.
So anyway, we've got with our trailer studio getting done, we needed to get some sort of TV anyway. So the idea is that when we sit opposite, we can discuss something and we can actually put it on. So there's the visual as well as the just us talking about it. So we're going to invest in TV anyway, but kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and we've been sponsored a lovely a Sony Bravia, quite a nice flat
straight off
TV.
The back of the lorry. It's hot. It's that hot you can't even pick the bloody thing up. So thank you very much, Kyle Gowland.
Kyle Gowland from KRG Motorcycles, and their sponsorship bit. KRG Motorcycles offer all aspects of motorcycle service, maintenance and repair, from superbikes to everyday commuter bikes. They specialise in suspension rebuild, servicing and setup, and are the Northeast's biggest authorised K-Tech suspension dealer for road and race. They also service and build Oland's, Shower, KYB, Nitron, Batubo, Hyperpro, and almost all OEM and standard suspension. They're also currently offering discounts to NHS and key workers on for essential repairs and safety checks to help keep you on the road. Search on Facebook and Instagram for KRG Motorcycles, or visit www.krg/motorcycles.co.uk for more information. Finally, please stay safe, people. So massive thank you to Kyle. And like I say, when we get our trailer, which is currently getting done by Andrew Lund, we'll get it all.
He's cracking on with that thing, mind, isn't he?
It is. It's coming on lovely. We'll send you some pictures, and hopefully, as soon as this lockdown's over, we'll get out and do some on the spot interviews, which I'm really excited for. Now, for this interview, we're going to be joined by Stuart Higgs, and obviously, like we've been talking about, these weird times where nobody really knows what's happening, and essentially we're going to have a massive recession, and it's going to definitely change the sport and how things are done, and obviously we'll get to talk about that. And it just makes us me remember of the last recession we had in sort of 2000, around the sort of 2008 time. That was actually when I was getting into my first year on the tarmac was in 2008, and I remember it was really tough times, and you know what it's like. As racing people, you prioritise racing, so it doesn't matter how skint you are. You just do without stuff.
I can't afford laces, but I need some tyres. Yeah. So there you go.
It is crazy. You're going shopping and you're trying to save 20p here, 30p here. Yet when you're racing, a set of tyres is a couple £100 and you just get them. It's crazy when you really think about it. But actually, I remember that around that sort of time, and as one way of sort of saving money, can you remember the old Army and Navy stores?
Oh, aye.
The one in Newcastle. One year, I actually got my school uniform from the Army and Navy store, and imagine how embarrassing that was, going to school dressed as a Japanese admiral.
I don't normally encourage your jokes, but that is.
Have you got any jokes for the pod?
Oh, Chrissy, we're just a couple of jokes. Let's face it. Right, well, on that note, let's get a bit serious, and let's talk about the present times. And obviously, from me and you, thank you so much to Stuart Higgs here for taking the time to come on our show, and it really, really, really appreciate it. So, yeah, hit the play button there, young'un. Hit the play button.
So fantastic to be joined by Racing Series Director Stuart Higgs. How's things, Stuart?
Well, practically pretty quiet. I mean, it's obviously a bit of a well, an unprecedented situation. I should be talking to you now from probably a dingy hotel room in the Northwich area as we head into Alton Park for round 2. But instead, we're still very much in the unknown phase, obviously, as we contend with the coronavirus and everything that it surrounds with us.
Yeah, obviously it is very, very strange times at the moment, unprecedented, and obviously a lot of people will be familiar with your name and see you at the front of the grid there with your headset on and in race control. But do you want to just quickly summarise your role as the series director?
Well, as everyone knows, I think Motorsport Vision Racing, part of the MSV Group, are the promoter and the organiser of the British Superbike Championship and have been since 2008. I joined them when they took over the reins of the championship from the previous promoter, but I've maintained a role in the championship probably certainly uninterrupted since its inception in what we call the current era, which is defined as started in 1996. I've been race director since then, but along the way picked up more and more roles and responsibilities, now to the position of series and race director, which is essentially head of the organisation, running the commercial side, the sporting side, and everything that goes with it.
And obviously we'll get on to talking about some of the major changes of the last 15 to 20 years, but I just wanted to start by asking what was your first introduction into the racing scene? Were you from a racing family, or how did you originally get into the sport?
Yeah, my father, who passed away in 1999, he was part of the local organisation of who put the races on at Brands Hatch and Snetterton and Crystal Palace and Silverstone back in the day. He headed up a Marshall's organisation. He was the secretary of the Triumph Owners Motorbike Club that had John Surtees as its president. So it was a big pedigree, but he was around the racing scene from the 60s through the 70s, and I popped up in 1970, and very early memories of going to Brands Hatch, being sort of shoved in behind a straw bale on a marshal's post at about sort of like 4 years old, hiding from the hierarchy of the day, and just being around the scene, principally at Brands Hatch more than any other track, but grown up with all the development of the sport, and had eyes and ears picking up, and been fortunate to turn it into my profession. Along the way, I have had what you'd call like regular jobs, but the very first opportunity was always involved in the sporting side of racing as opposed to the competition side. And lucky enough to get an opportunity in 1991 to be part of the organisation of one of the Shell Super Cup races, which was the British Championship of the day at Brands Hatch, and that got me introduced to a guy called Robert Fennell, who was the managing director of Donington and its promoting company called 24 Sports. Robert really was my mentor. He was the guy who essentially reshaped the landscape of British motorcycle racing in 1995 by setting up an organisation called the MCRCB, which is the Motorcycle Circuit Racing Control Board. Put all the commercial rights and the organisation rights together, restructured everything, and took it to a new level. I was part of that new structure from day one and remain so today.
Wow. Now, that was a very fantastic answer. You've definitely got that down to a script, which is fantastic. Now, when your dad took you to your first meeting and put you behind a straw bale and you started marshalling, did you ever think, I fancy having a go being on the track yourself? Did you ever fancy getting into racing on that side of things?
Absolutely, but I mean, in those days, absolutely, certainly as a teenage kid, I absolutely would have nothing more than I wanted to do to actually try and race. But those opportunities then absolutely weren't there. You didn't start motorcycle racing until I think 16 or even 17 years old, and that was in the mid 80s. So when we have classes now like the British Talent Cup or our Junior Supersport Championship, where we have riders as young as 12 involved, I have a 12-year-old son myself now. It hardly seems even conceivable that that's what you can do these days. So that opportunity never presented itself, and by probably 16, that that had gone, and without making an over dramatization of it, those were pretty quite sad times in the 80s. A lot of riders were hurt, frankly, unnecessary. Circuit safety was a bit of an afterthought. Cars and bikes had to race together on circuits, and it was all one big compromise. But I think motorcycles compromised way more than they had to. The safety device round a 130 mile an hour corner to stop you hitting an earth bank would have been chicken wire with wooden posts on it, and you put a straw bale on the wooden post for the motorbike racers and hope that they didn't hit it. Well, unfortunately, many people did, and I saw a lot of the difficult and obvious bad side of racing. I think that perhaps kind of shaped my future, but it also motivated me that I have a very clear memory that I had an instinct back, even as and it sounds daft, as probably a 9 or a 10-year-old, thinking a lot of stuff I was seeing I thought was inherently wrong. I thought it was downright dangerous and stupid and clumsy, and just defied common sense. And if I could ever get the opportunity to do something to make it better, I would. And that opportunity came along. Much of it gifted by the position that my father had, but it's worked out. Worked out well.
So you mentioned you've got a 12-year-old son. Is he thinking about getting into the racing side of it?
No, I mean, he's very much into ball sports. I mean, he's paying.
You'll make a lot more money doing that as well. So you make sure you keep some boots on his feet, young man.
My wife and I separated some years ago, and he lives in another part of the country with my ex-wife and my daughter, and they're both into sport very heavily. My son plays county level cricket as a 12-year-old, just been selected for Glamorgan, and rugby to a regional standard, as well as football. My daughter plays hockey to a regional standard. So they're crafting their own kind of sporting future, very competitive. I'd like to think they probably get that from me, the sort of absolute determination and willpower to do things. But that's their path. They come to the races reasonably infrequently, but love it. They know a lot of the staff and the personalities involved, and but they wouldn't have what I call the motorsport bug like me. So.
Mm-hmm. And when it came to sort of leaving school and going, like, looking at jobs and stuff, did you always have in mind the sort of the role that you play now when sort of picking like what you did, like further education and stuff, or was it something you sort of fell into later in life?
No, not really. I mean, the kind of the volunteer sector has always been a massive part of the organisation of racing, both car and bike racing, and you could occupy a position as a clerk on a course or a race director essentially as a volunteer. So from the sporting side, my career was ascending through that period of leaving school. I had jobs. I went down a route of IT and finance and technology through to working in the City of London. I was head of IT for a European bank at a time, oddly enough, when the internet was still the one computer on one floor in a 7-floor office. So that's how far ago that was. So people laugh at me when I talk about you were head of IT, but it was like pre-internet. But I was still doing the racing stuff on the side. I mean, it was a ridiculously busy schedule of like racing Saturdays, Sundays, and a regular job, and making it all kind of work. But as the sport needed and quite correctly became more professional, it recognised that it needed people to do it full time, and an opportunity came along in 2001. Ironically, from the car racing side of the sport, I got a phone call one night from Martin Brundle, who you'll know as a former Formula One driver, broadcaster. He was the chairman of the British Racing Drivers Club that at the time owned Silverstone. And a position became available to head up the racing operation of Silverstone. It was a very political time where the BRDC and Octagon, who were the owners of Brands Hatch and other circuits at the time, had got the British Grand Prix rights, and there was all inter-circuit trading going on, and Silverstone being leased to the Octagon Group, and highly complicated, but a role became available. I saw that as an opportunity to go full-time into the sport. There was some heavy negotiation to be done to allow me to continue with my two-wheel responsibilities, which were critical, and it worked out in the end. I mean, by way of example, my job interview was with the board of the BRDC, which at the time consisted of the interviewees were Sir Jackie Stewart, Martin Brundle and John Surtees, which I think in terms of a motorsport interview, it doesn't get more royalty than that. I was asked a question by Sir Jackie Stewart at the time. I don't think he was even knighted at the time. It predated that. But we're taking a risk on you. I was 31 years of age. You'll be a very young employee in this sport, and we're a very historic organisation. We have to understand your pedigree and what your roots are. So I kind of hoped he was going to ask the question. So I pulled from my pocket a picture of my father with John Surtees, who, as I mentioned earlier, was the president of the Triumph Owners Motorbike Club, and there was a photo of my dad and John Surtees from about 1962 outside of John Surtees' motorbike dealership. And I slid the photo down the table. I went, well, that's all I can offer you today. And John Surtees looked at it, smiled, and saw that there was a bike man in the organisation, and sort of like whispered something in Jackie Stewart's ear, and that was that. So it was it's not a very frequently told story, but it's one I'm particularly proud of.
I bet. It's like, right, son, this is what you could have had. Right, let's wind everyone's neck in. That's brilliant.
The other day we had Neil Hodgson on the podcast, and we were obviously talking about the BSB around that sort of the 2000 sort of era, and he was saying kind of that from the back end of like the 98, 99, like the BSB Championship, a lot of it was people turning up in sort of converted horse boxes, and then all of a sudden the series seemed to massively take an upward trajectory in terms of the professionalism and the appearance of and obviously nowadays you're looking at everyone's in massive Arctic lorries, and it's a much more professional outfit. Yeah. Was that obviously you being involved around that sort of time? Was that do you see that as a sort of a big change? That sort of period as being pivotal.
It goes back a little bit before that. I mean, in the mid '90s, just before MCRCB was set up, there were some great efforts. There was an organisation set up called Form, which was like a trade union body for teams and riders called the Forum of Road Racing Motorcyclists or something like that. But the leading lights of the day were Colin Seeley, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, and Rob McElnay and Colin Appleyard. And they were just bashing the teams into line, because we could see that British touring cars had taken a big step. I mean, they had, I think, something like 8 or 9 motor manufacturers involved with ridiculous budgets. I mean, it was about 5-6 million quid a year to run a two-car touring car team in British Touring Car, and they were just running rings around motorbike racing. We looked like this kind of like country fair. So the first thing was the obvious thing, like paddock parking, making people people just wanted to park their road cars next to their race truck, and it was several years of torture and discipline. Colin Seeley would go around throwing people out of pit lane if they weren't wearing some form of smart team gear. If he saw someone in a pair of flip-flops in the pit lane, I think he'd march them to the gate. But that was the starting point. Then MCRCB took over, and it was much more regimented. Obviously, we took a lot of criticism at the time. People hated the idea of a permanent pass system. A lot of the backhanders of dodgy sort of tickets and that went out the window because it was a photo pass and proper credentials. Restrictions to get on the pit wall, the grid, and a lot of the people that resisted it and didn't want to come anymore were actually probably the people that we didn't want there anyway. So it did its job. But certainly it was a big curve, but not without pain. I mean, even in the first year, the Old Spice Ducati team had some difficulties, but again, from the outside it looked all shiny and glossy, but there was a lot of pain internally. The Kawasaki team, the next year they folded mid-year. There was a Ducati team called IFC Ducati, which came in, I think, in the early 2000s. That only lasted 3 or 4 races. So there's always been projects that have failed, and that makes the thing look weak. But certainly 96, 97, 98 was the groundwork years of getting the thing established. 99 there was a big step. GSE came to the championship, 2 massive yellow Arctic trailers one for sort of like the engineering truck and one for the race truck, and that set the bar. And then there was a little bit of the fashionistas of everyone wanting to step up to the game. You're right. There were the Cadbury's Boost Yamaha team. Their transporter was a converted horse box. I think 2000 was probably then the next real step change. Virgin had been in the championship for a year. We saw other sponsors coming in, and then it just went on this tremendous this period of growth. I mean, at the moment, I'm doing these daily vlogs on Twitter. I'm up to 2007 was done today, and it was a golden era. Going through the 2000s again. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that was quite turbulent with the commercial side, because everyone thinks it's all easy and there's all this finance slashing around. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's been a pretty knife edge operation making the thing work. Circuits are very expensive to run. Race teams are very expensive to run. Unfortunately, motorcycle racing doesn't, certainly domestic motorcycle racing, just doesn't have the luxury of something like the Premiership football, where a broadcaster will pay you a 7-figure sum. We have to essentially pay to be on TV. That's the harsh reality of it all. So it's a delicate set of economics, but it's growth, careful growth. But along the way, mistakes have been made. Some of the focus has gone wrong. I remember calling a big teams meeting in the mid 2000s, saying, "Look, for Christ's sake, guys, you're worrying more about the potted plants and the water features in the hospitality than the engineering on the motorcycles." And you've got to get that right. What the front of the garage is more important than the back of the garage, because without that, the back doesn't exist. I know you've got to make it all work, but it's keeping the priorities right. And I hope as we go through this period, as we did through the global financial crisis in 8, 9, and 10. Is that the lean operations and very clever operations of the teams. I mean, the BSB paddock, if you ever wanted a lesson in life skills and survival and business acumen and entrepreneurism, spend some time in the BSB paddock. It's there's some difficult people, but there's wholly a lot of very smart people that get a lot of pride in what they do, can make things happen. Very motivated, very dynamic, smart thinking, and it's a pleasure to be around. And I hope that skill set from the committed group of people in the paddock will see us through.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the big changes that you alluded to in BSB in them early years of the 2000s was obviously the TV changing from being on BBC, and then I know it's been a few different channels. It went to ITV for a bit, and obviously later Eurosport. Back then, I remember watching BSB on like BBC One or BBC Two on a Sunday, and obviously you would get to see the superbike races, but the other classes. I don't know if they were on some other TV or whatever, but you wouldn't really follow them. These days, for the more, for the real bike enthusiasts, you can pretty much sit there all weekend watching every, practice session, qualifying race. But obviously the trade-off to that is that it's on Eurosport, which is like less popular than on BBC. How do you sort of see that trade-off?
Well, I mean, the media landscape, I mean, it changes so quickly that anyone who genuinely believes they know what they're talking about on it is a little bit deluded, because everything changes very, very quickly. I mean, when the championship started in, say, 96 in the current era, getting that crucial post-produced 30 minutes highlight show on BBC Grandstand, which was the nation's flagship sports programme, was absolutely everything. So it was an audience of probably 1.5 to 2 million viewers every Saturday or Sunday when it was broadcast. At that time, Sky and the whole satellite platform was quite embryonic. I mean, British Sky Broadcasting didn't launch in the UK until I think 1990 or 1991. So it was still very early days on a non-terrestrial audience. So terrestrial was everything, and it carried a lot of sport. I mean, BBC Grandstand on a typical afternoon would cover anything from horse racing, cricket, motorsport, golf, you name it was on there. ITV would have World of Sport, and then when that stopped, they'd do selected sports shows for particular sports, boxing, horse racing, etc., etc. as pay TV and specialist TV channels came on, it was obvious that the paid TV channels wanted content, or prepared to pay for it, and dilute the audience. But from an advertiser's perspective, they saw a much more knowledgeable audience, and I think any advertiser will tell you they would rather take a 150 to 200,000 audience on, say, a Eurosport or a BT Sport or a specialist sports channel with a particular demographic that knows what it's looking for, that's switched on, against what in the latter days of terrestrial on a Sunday afternoon was probably a 1 million audience, of which 80% of them would be irrelevant to what was actually on. And that's why at the end of 2007, ITV said quite bluntly, we won't be carrying regular live sport on free-to-air network television other than England football internationals. So when we sort of broke the news, we're off of ITV1, a lot of people... you've failed us, you've let us down. We actually just knew what was coming. The reality was, over a period of the next couple of years from 2008, there was the digital cutover where every television set had 100 channels on it, like the ITV4s and the Quests and things like that. So our approach then was to always have a scattergun across different platforms. So you're never going to get a free-to-air broadcaster to have hours and hours and hours and hours of the same thing on a channel, because basically people they won't hold the audience. So you kind of package that for your more broad-based audience. You make a nice program that gives all the racing bit of background, but it's in a size of content that can be consumed by a non-specialist audience. The Eurosports of the world and the BT Sports of the world, they can do 3 consecutive days of 6 hours or 7 hours of programming, analysing every angle, and there will be an audience that will potentially pay for that. So what we've managed to do, and it's taken some time, but if you take a typical BSB weekend, we will have our great coverage on Eurosport that's over the digital platform on a Friday, digital and their linear TV on a Saturday and a Sunday. 3 hours on a Saturday, 5-6 hours on a Sunday. Then we have an ITV4 free-to-air program on Wednesday. Because Discovery, who own Eurosport, also run the Quest channel, there's another free-to-air program on Quest. There's a graveyard shift program on ITV1. So if you add them all up, you get back to the magic million that you once had in your one program on terrestrial TV in the mid 2000s or late 1990s, and we feel that way you're giving everybody everything on a platform that's accessible. Obviously, the next challenge is the next group of sports connoisseurs. I've got a 12-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter. They don't watch television, and I'm sure that's representative of a lot of people of that age. They are just purely and simply using iPad and iPhone, watching on-demand content. They don't sit down and watch movies on linear TV or sit down and watch. My son will probably watch a big sporting event. So you've kind of got that to cling to. But that's the next challenge: is that do you go then to a provider like Amazon Prime moving into the sports market, or DAZN, which are a bit like that. I mean, DAZN, their model is basically like Netflix for sports. Do you go onto that type of model? You could, but it's the old adage, you might get a few quid for it, but you could dilute your audience so far that everybody else goes, well, yeah, but no one's watching. So we think the best approach remains a little bit of everything on every platform. Television is by far still the biggest medium to show the product, so that's where it's positioned. But then around it, obviously, there's things like this, and then, as has been proven, particularly with the CV crisis that we're in at the moment, digital content across the social platforms has never been more prevalent. I mean, even those silly little video log things that I'm doing on Twitter myself, one of them,
Rob Back Memories.
Rob Back Memories, 10,000 views. I mean, the fact that 10,000 people can be bothered to listen to 2 minutes 20 of my drivel. I mean, I notice it's down to about 5,000 now, so there's obviously an acceptance that I'm speaking utter nonsense, but it shows the power of free content on these devices. So I mean, the whole landscape has changed. And if we take it over to general media, from the motorcycle world, you would always buy your motorcycle news, and you had to read motorcycle news. We put an advert in motorcycle news to promote a race event. Well, a Facebook post will reach more people than a newspaper will, now. So it's all flipped on its head. It's actually the media. Some of the media houses actually need us now as the content holders and the championships, because we've got the content, we've got the draw card of the events and the property of the championship that makes people come to us to look for things, and that's how the model works now. We've seen this week, Cinetic BMW just launched their new digital magazine called Full Gas. Great high quality lifestyle type publication that can be 2 clicks and you're viewing it. That's the way, and it's giving value to their sponsors, which is exactly what we need to be doing in this sort of downtime.
Definitely sounds like obviously listening to that there, it sounds very, very close to almost being watered down too much. Very close, doesn't it? And you just think, like you say, trying to concentrate that into one avenue. But I'll tell you what you need to keep doing is them Twitter videos. Because I'll tell you what, that was some laugh. Now, what was great about it is that you were talking about the tyre wars section. Now, me personally, watching the BSB, what's brilliant about it is that it is a more, shall we say, a concentrated avenue of rules compared to other championships like World Superbikes, where they kind of go, look, if you've got a big wallet, you can go racing. The fact that you were brought in electronic rules, tyre rules, like the showdown for existence, is absolutely brilliant. Now, out of all those, what has been your biggest decision, your hardest decision to make as far as tyres, electronics and everything? What's been your hardest decision?
I think the ECU rules for sure, because that was just such a sea change from what everyone was used to. But how we did it, we had our Evo class, which was our second technical level. So it replaced like the Privateers Cup. So we were able to do a live pilot of what a technical regulation would look like. So rather than do it and then, you learn by experiencing these things. In 2008, we moved to a super sport level of tuning for superbikes, and people were throwing rods through bikes at an alarming rate. So we didn't solve anything. We thought we'd make it cheaper. We probably made it more expensive. So with that experience, we said, well, never again will we just make a technical rule change without first bench checking it. And sometimes, you have to, you've got your gut feeling, but you do need to do a proper real-time test with it, and that gave us the confidence and showed everybody, because when we first said control ECU for everybody, people laughed at us. Can't be done by racing, impossible. We said, well, frankly, we don't believe you. The biggest driving force for that was Jonathan Palmer. He said, look, I don't give a monkeys. He said, if a Formula One car at the time, they threw all the electronic aids, if a Formula One car doesn't have traction control and all these gizmos, then nor can a BSB bike. It's yes, but it doesn't make any sense because it's critical for the development of road bikes. And it's like, look, BSB, with the greatest of respect, isn't a engineering playground for the road bikes of tomorrow. And it was quite right to say, listen, the Williams or the McLaren Renault or whatever car, Renault Formula One car of that particular period, that hasn't got traction control. Are you seriously saying you're not going to buy a Renault Clio now because the Formula One car doesn't have traction control? Everyone. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of racing is sometimes we all get a bit too hung up on the technicality and the purity of it, and we drive ourselves in knots, and we think that nothing can be changed. And this next period is going to test us now, probably to greater limits than ever before. We've got to think outside the box. Classes and structure and why we race and what we race and where we race.
All right.
We've all got to really look at how and why and what we do and do it to the best efficiency.
So what potential changes are you thinking? Because honestly, from my point of view, the rules that you've got in place are absolutely brilliant. It's like, we call it full whiskey, your electronics thing. You get rid of traction control and off you go. And what you've done is you've brought all these manufacturers back in line with each other. So obviously the Ducatis at the moment, we'll discuss that later on, them Italian animals are just pissing off into the distance. But you have got different manufacturers at the front on any given weekend. So it's interesting to hear you saying, we're going to have to make changes. What potential changes are you looking at for the future?
Honestly, nothing specific, but obviously cost and the cost of racing is and always will be an expensive operation, and we have to work with the teams, the manufacturers, the supply chain, basically everything. We are going to have to move into survival mode, and it's the fat has got to be chucked off. Like anything, if you can do it well and you can sustain it, you do it. But if you don't absolutely need to do it and there's no particular detrimental outcome to the show, then you've got to consider it. From the global motorcycle industry may wake up in 6 months' time and think, really, do we need to be selling what is a current superbike or a Superstock 1000 bike? Actually, is there a global market for these bikes? Really, in the kind of like the cost of production, R&D, and how many we actually sell at the end of the day, is that sustainable? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not trying to be alarmist and negative, but I think everybody needs to be prepared for the fact that the entire industry has been dormant for weeks, if not months. The retail and supply chain is shot to pieces. Things are going to change, and we've just got to be ready to react to that. And there could be sectors of the motorcycle market that are ebullient for sales that don't currently have a sporting outlet, that the manufacturers might say, hey, we got to make these visible, and this is now the platform. Completely hypothetically speaking, but I think we just got to be ready for it. And a purist and the good old days, that's not going to cut it. So we've just got to take the journey together, work out what works and what doesn't work, and make the sport survive at all levels, because it's got to work at the absolute grassroots club racing level through to the national level and the international world championship levels.
And speaking of such, it's been brilliant timing for the British Talent Cup coming in, obviously massively reducing, obviously the Moto 3 class has been getting more and more expensive over the few years, to a point where to compete at the front, as you would have to spend so much on the bike and the setup and have the right team. And the new rules to bring the standard Honda 250s.
Yeah, that's another class where it got to the point where you got what is essentially one of the only classes for a particular age category of 14 upwards, and yet it was carrying hardware costs for just the bike alone of 40 to 50,000 euros. Completely unsustainable. And exactly. A second-hand Calet's KTM Moto 3 bike, you'd have 2 or 3 of those in the class, and as welcome as they were, the riders that were on those bikes would certainly enjoy that level of technical superiority. And everyone else would be fighting to keep up, and no one would be really learning anything. So to do that, the Moto 3 standard class, it gives us some of the best racing. It's a reference point to equivalent categories in Europe. The European Talent Cup, for example, which races alongside CEV, and so we can, with some justification, say that we can benchmark our riders from that age pool against other riders. Dorna obviously decided to do their more controlling version of the series for the first 2 years, but as they rightly recognise, is that the UK is a very developed racing environment, and it's quite contained, unlike, for example, Asia, which is obviously a huge geographical area, and it can bring people from all sorts of places that would just never have the opportunity to race. So when they do a call for talent in Asia, it's different to doing the call for talent in the UK, where people that either race already or would race anyway are brought together. It was a bit of a mishmash. And then, you know, everyone kind of got into that environment. It wasn't enough races. It was a very expensive operation, and our collective view was that the investment of Dorna should really go into the next phase. Is that we can manage the platform and regulate it and provide the championship structure. But the key is for the riders that excel in that class, they get the genuine opportunity to go into the Junior World Championship or Red Bull Rookies or something like that. So, it's like anything. There won't be overnight success with it. It is going to take time. We as a nation are culturally totally different to Spain and Italy, for example, where, you know, a 3 or 4 year old in Spain every waking hour is probably pounding around a kart track on a tiny little powered motorcycle, whereas in the UK, other than the mini moto structure and the fab racing and the British mini bike stuff that's happening, the facilities and the opportunity for kids don't exist in the UK, and in some places they're considered a bit of a nuisance. And culturally, you know, it's not kind of a done thing. We have a different social structure. You know, I mean, I remember it wasn't too long ago when dear Craig Jones was racing in our junior super stock series when it was for 600s in, I think, 2002, 2003, that time period. Had a crash at Alton Park, broke his legs. Within a couple of days, we had phone calls from the regional child protection officer saying how awful they thought it was that, as it was then, a 15-year-old kid was racing a motorcycle, or a 16-year-old kid was racing a motorcycle. So it's very different in the UK, and I think that's the biggest thing that we've also had to tell the likes of Dorna is that, you know, as a 13 and a 14-year-old, midweek, you don't get kids able to just go to racetracks and pound round and run, because the tracks just simply aren't available because they'll have other activity. The British motorsport industry and sort of circuit industry, you know what it's like yourselves. There's track days, cars and bikes every day of the week, or manufacturer type stuff. You know, a track is not going to simply go, okay, No Limits or Ford Motor Company, you can't come to do whatever you're doing today on a track hire, because we always leave Wednesday afternoon opens for kids to have a little run round on their motor free bikes. You know, that's just not how it works. Whereas there's an abundance of tracks in Spain, many of them are just simply not utilised very much.
And so it's obviously great that we have the lowest class, as in like size wise, a good competitive and something that's affordable for like a much more affordable than in the past. Have you got plans for maybe like a one make sort of middle series, such as say a Moto 2 style championship, but something where the costs are relatively, you know, affordable?
Well, I mean, we've got our the whole 600 thing's been a complete topsy-turvy run for the last couple of years. Super Sport's a fabulous class, some of the best racing of all weekend, every weekend. The manufacturers clearly don't have a great deal of success across Europe selling the 600 bikes to the market, so they essentially are purely a sporting tool or a track day tool. That gives us a little problem as a sporting organiser. So without much information on what the middleweight sector would look like for the industry, we obviously saw that with Moto 2 changing to Triumph hardware at Grand Prix level, that there will be a few GP2 bikes coming online on GP2 chassis. We can keep the Honda engines going, and also livening up some of the specialist chassis engineers in the UK, like Harris, for example, by using essentially a super sport bike platform and modifying it, giving it some agility in the chassis wise. And I think what we've got is it's a bit of a, you know, I'm loath to use the word dirty fix, but it's where it is. You know, we certainly can't we wouldn't be able to sustain a full-blown Grand Prix Moto 2 technical level championship. So what we've got with a combination of Supersport and GP2 is the best of everything to create what's going to be, at the moment, there's an entry list, I think 29 or 30 bikes, and it's roughly 50-50 between the two, which I think is an incredible testament to the likes of Tony Scott and the guys at FTR and Harris and Chassis Factory, who have believed in the class. Independent teams that, our thought was, if people have been willing to go and spend quite a lot of money on Moto 3 prototype bikes, move them into the GP2 environment and spend perhaps less on a machine in that category with more recognition and more profile, and that seems to be resonating with a few people. So that's where we are. I mean, what was going to be interesting this year? I mean, obviously desperate that we do get some running this year, but Brandon Pash, the British Moto 3 champion, moving into GP2 on a GP2 bike, and I think that's a good sign of where this class needs to go.
Yeah, definitely. Here's a question for you, mate. Right, if you could have your dream category, obviously growing up, being a marshal, what bikes would you want on the track? What class would your dream class be at the BSB at the moment? I'm talking 2 strokes, anything.
Well, I think if someone could give us, the 2-stroke. I mean, all eras are good. I mean, it's very difficult to compare as everything. I mean, I liked the when the 990 MotoGP bikes first came out. I thought they were absolutely amazing. They were like hell machines. I mean, they were just the most radical, tire smoking, grunty. They looked, half fairings. They looked angry, proper bikes. I hated the 800cc category in MotoGP. I thought that was, they were almost like too perfect. The racing wasn't good. The current 1000cc bikes in MotoGP, I think, have now got a little bit too ugly, if I'm honest. The Ducati, I think, looks absolutely hideous.
With the wings and stuff.
I don't know that very much. I mean, but from a purity point of view, I loved the 500 era of Doohan, Schwantz, Lawson, Rainey. A 500cc Grand Prix bike on full chat was a joy to behold. When the British Grand Prix used to be, for example, at Silverstone, like you see someone coming through Chapel Curve onto the Hangar Straight in the Dayglow Marlborough colours. Was it Lawson or was it his teammate? And you just see the yellow front number plate, knowing it'll be a 500 Grand Prix bike and a Rothmans Honda. They were for me the pinnacle GP bikes. And 250s, 250 Grand Prix racing and 250 national level racing in the early 90s was just the best racing of all time. Neil Mackenzie, Donny McLeod, Andy Watts, Alan Carter, Nigel Bosworth, etc., etc., etc. They were just every race was like a 7-8 man train. And it was a sad day when the 250 stopped, but that's life.
So, sorry, I'm full of just quick questions on this show. So when let's say that scenario ran, right? All of a sudden they gave you a bunch of Hell Racing 500 GP legendary bikes, right? How much could you sit there and enjoy it? Now, being in the position you're the man who quite literally dishes out the portions. If someone makes a mistake or does something dangerous, it's your job to obviously dish out the discipline. So how much can you actually sit back and relax while watching racing, or can you just simply not do it?
No, I don't particularly like watching races that I've not got a mental involvement in. When I go and do MotoGP stuff as a steward, because I'm not actively participating in the live decisions, it's a bit of the stuff of nothing. But when it's one of my events or our events, I'm absolutely it's a bit like auto. I'm sure it's a bit like somebody says that when they're flying a plane, they kind of know they're doing it, but they don't know they're doing it. So the classic Hill v Hopper Brands Hatch 2011 race. Because I was so preoccupied. I was running the event, but because other stuff was going on, it never really dawned on me until about 3 laps to go, the points permutations. And I think that's kind of what you have to do. You can't really do the job I do in race direction and watch the race like a fan, because you just wouldn't be objective, and you have to be watching every element of it from medical, marshals, sporting etiquette, weather, all the factors. You're watching everything all the time, so it's just blobs going round and numbers. You can't get emotionally involved and go, oh, that's Tommy Brible's doing that, or I feel about this, or I feel about that. So it is.
Yeah.
It must be so difficult because obviously, like watching a race, like you usually do pick somebody out and you're kind of willing them to make them, and like seeing them line something up. It must be. I've been into race control and there's millions of computers and you're so preoccupied with, like you've just said, like so many jobs at the same time. Now, I wanted to ask you about, obviously we're in totally unprecedented times at the moment. Nobody like truly knows what's happening and where everything's going. Now, obviously, there's lots of potential scenarios for the rest of the season. On a sort of optimistic note, what sort of contingency plans are you working on to get some racing in 2020?
Well, I mean, it is an unknown, and it's difficult to pin colours to the mast. I mean, we can only look at what's happening in other countries and use that as a bit of a barometer. I mean, the most pessimistic outlook is that nothing happens this year, and as unpalatable as that sounds, it's not an unrealistic outcome. But parking that for one side, we've got calendar models working from anything from end of June through to realistically the start of September. Beyond that, you just simply run out of usable weekends. We're certainly not going to start a championship in November and December. So how those events would run is obviously then the next question. There are obviously a number of ways, whether they are with spectators, unrestricted, with spectators restricted, or with no spectators. And in each of those cases, the model changes quite dramatically with the economics of it all. As I remarked before, we are a broadcast sport, and the economics, how it all works out, we're not paid a 7-figure sum by a broadcaster per annum to put a show on that we can simply take the money and redistribute it and run an event irrespective of the crowd. The crowd and the fan base of the championship is the cornerstone of the championship, and I firmly mean that. So without them, or if they are restricted, it changes the model. The number of days we're at an event obviously is a cost factor in terms of infrastructure. Medical is a massive thing. Obviously, the last thing we need to be doing and can be doing is burdening the public health services for what is essentially a discretionary pastime. So we've got to work very closely with our medical delegates, and they will feed into the national system to see what we can do and where we can do it. But you got to try and be positive with this. There's no point throwing in the towel. Formula One have obviously said they want to try and run 15 to 18 races this year. I think that's probably a bit more optimistic than realistic. I think for us, if we can, if we were able to get something running up in, I've always said, of all my calendar permutations, the one that sort of sticks out at me is the one that's sort of August. That gives us a good 3 months to put a program of races together. We're certainly not going to run 12 events. I think we could do 9 over that period at maximum. Obviously, we've got to play with the class structure across the events. We can go a little later, and obviously that will mean then less events. I think it still is credible and meaningful. But until we know, we don't know. And, I think what I'm really keen not to do is go and get a whole set of false flags raised, and make anyone spend any money on any form of preparation that they don't need to do. This is all about keeping things lean and tight. When we get the information and a sense of direction, we can work with that information, tailor it to what is possible, and make a plan from there. But I think the will of everybody is there, and I think everyone has seen us in the past, from both myself as an individual and the organisation. We will move heaven and earth to make things happen and be adaptive and think on our feet, dream up things that have never been dreamt before. Some may be controversial, some may be even unpalatable. But
I like the sound of that. I like this. Honestly, I do like the sound of that. The thing is that's what keeps these things alive.
But on the flip side, I think we have to play to our strengths, and one of our strengths is we are operating in an area of relatively small geography. We do have to take a bit of an island mentality to this, and that could actually be our biggest strength in this. It sounds a bit selfish, but it's realistic. Is that, you know, if I was sitting here as the promoter of a championship that had to was duty bound, or had to move 5,000 people across borders or across continents and aeroplanes to move cargo, I'd be going, it's almost almost impossible. So, we work from as far north as Knockhill to as far south as Thruxton. We can beam a television signal from Knockhill to Australia, and if we can string some races together that can be broadcast, and we can engage with the public and operate in a safe and structured way, that we don't do anything to disturb the dealing with this situation. Sport's important, but it is taking a backseat. But we've got a role to play. I think sport's a massive part of people's lives, and I think we owe it as an organizer to try and work with all the tools we've got to try and keep something going that keeps a sport that is a source of enjoyment to many hundreds of thousands of people across the tracks and the broadcast audience and everything. And people, no one puts a gun to anyone's head to go racing. People want to do it. You, Chrissy,
exactly.
I want to know. There's nothing more than I want to do than the adrenaline of ready for a race start, and what everyone goes through. And it seems a long way away at the moment, but in many ways that will just make the reward even richer when we get to it. I keep saying if, but no, when we get to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think if you did get towards the end of the season, and if the NHS seemed to be getting on top of the coronavirus situation, and the amount of deaths were falling quite rapid, and it was sort of time to reintroduce some racing, but let's just say there wasn't enough time to run a championship. I was thinking it would be a really cool idea to have something similar to the sort of transatlantic trophy, but to have, let's say if we only had like 3 rounds or something, and introduce something like a Team UK versus like the rest of the world, and kind of run it like very similar to BSB, but it would be just add a sort of team element. And if you could maybe get a sponsor to put like a big, like Monster Energy, if Monster Energy put like a big cash prize up in it, and it would be, it would be a great end to the season. It would be, maybe have like Team UK and like you can get one guest rider from like the MotoGP paddock or something like that. It would be, something a bit different, but it would definitely, every single person that's interested in bike racing would be glued to that.
Definitely. All on 500 GP bikes, 2 strokes.
I mean, Wayne Rainey's, I've got to know Wayne really well since 2015, and whenever we go out for dinner or almost within 90 seconds of us having a chat on anything, we get around to talking about a transatlantic. I mean, it's pretty difficult to travel anywhere, but it's on the list of things to do. And actually, I mean, it's not as daft as it sounds. I mean, I think there are going to be some significant challenges with multi-country sports tournaments. I'm not saying motorsport, but things hopping from country to country are going to be very challenging over the next few years, and maybe standalone events where there's one set of travelling from one place to another, and that's it over a smaller period, may be a more palatable concept for countries, teams, industry sponsors, broadcasters, whatever. I don't know. It goes back to what I said earlier. Start thinking outside the box, because we are in new waters.
Now, Holden, you mentioned a very famous name, Wayne Rainey there. Now, I've got another quick question for you. Who's been your favourite rider you've ever worked with, and who's been the hardest one you've ever worked with?
Favourite. I had a lot of time for Steve Hislop. I thought he was just an absolute gentleman. On his day when everything was when everything was going well and smooth and his head was right and the bike was right, probably one of if not the fastest rider in the world. And he lapped, I think, in 2002 at Donington on his BSB Superbike faster than Rossi had done earlier in the year on his MotoGP bike.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was probably like the guy I always was a bit of a, and whenever I wanted to chat a bit of information, he was just always just an easy go-to person. But I mean, I've always steered clear of having sort of favourites and whatever. You've got to treat everyone, because it always comes back to bite you. I mean, I did recount the one I never really got on with was Guy Martin, but we won't go dwell into that. So
I seen you mention that on your 220 with your Rob Mac memories, and obviously it's quite a famous incident. But like you say, if you don't want to speak about it, that's fine.
Get on your Twitter.
On that topic, I was just going to ask about who's the most difficult team boss that you've ever had to deal with within your job.
I mean, none of them really. I mean, I think I've fallen out with them all equally. I mean, Colin White, Neil Tapsworth, I mean, Birdies. I mean, everyone. They're in high pressure jobs. They're putting, in many cases, it's personal finance going into it. They're absolutely committed to this, and when decisions don't go their way, it's easy to go for the point of the pyramid that is the source of the problem, and that's generally me. So I've got pretty broad shoulders. I mean, honestly, there's not one. I mean, there's not one single, honestly, team personality at any level that's really particularly fazed me, because ultimately, like anything in life, they don't have to do it. If it's a discretionary activity for some people, if it gets to a point where they just absolutely just cannot agree to any decision or any way of working or any regulation, then they're probably in the wrong place. Because like any sport, it's got to be structured. There's got to be a standard that you've got to adhere to. And if you're just not prepared to do it and you can't work with the people, well, it's kind of self-determining, really.
Yeah.
And I must say, over the last few years, obviously with MSV taking the lease at Donington Park, you've, as an organisation, you've done an amazing job transforming the circuit facilities, the appearance, but as a rider, when you're on the track and the where the crowd can get to, it's even just something simple like painting the curves, making everything like it's really stepped up in terms of the circuit. There's obviously circuits over the years that BSB have been to and haven't been to, such as we're local to Croft.
Bring back Croft. Please bring back Croft.
Is there any possibility that Croft would ever be back on the BSB circuit, or is it? Go on, you can answer that one.
I never say never. I mean, ultimately they were the guys who said we didn't want to do it anymore. So that's kind of how it was. I mean, they only have a certain number of days that they can operate because of their planning restrictions, and quite reasonably they elected to use more events that were guaranteed track rental as opposed to promoted events where you're speculating on the return you might get. You're paying a promoter's fee, a lot of infrastructure costs, and much of it temporary up at Croft, and get a rainy day or a big problem up there and you've lost your shirt on it. So that's why they stepped away from it. So, but they're part of the BARC group, I think it is, and they're good colleagues of ours. So there's no opportunity immediately available, but never say never. And for sure, I mean, certainly the early races there in 2004, 2005 in particular were great. I mean, the queues were, I think, as far back as the A1 to Scotch Corner.
Definitely. I'll tell you what, we're just looking at the time here, and it's we're flying away, having a great time. So we're going to quickly wrap up this interview with some quick fire questions. So, Chrissy, if you want to go over the first one, my man.
First one, who's the most talented rider never to win a BSB championship?
Oh, that's a very tricky question.
Quick fire, not easy.
Yeah, quick fire. I couldn't even answer that off the cuff. I mean, honestly, don't know. I mean,
We can come back to that.
We're going to go back to that
do
one,
right?
One. Dead simple, nothing to do with motorcycles. Right, when you're making a cup of tea, do you put milk, then water, or water, then milk?
Oh, milk's last. I mean, there's no other way to do it. There's a heathen that should be put in the Tower of London and flogged.
If there was one rider that you would, if you could handpick anybody from World Superbikes, MotoGP, America, wherever, if there was one rider that you could bring into the BSB paddock from another series, who would that be?
I quite like to see Top Rack do Cadwell, I think. He'd be my start at the moment. But I mean, as Reading proved, I mean, class is class. And so if Top Rack from World Superbike, and obviously if Marquez ever wanted to have a little go at Thruxton, then it'd be great. We graciously accept him for the day.
They are. So Marquez, if you are listening, please get in touch, mate. That'd be grand. Next one, your greatest BSB season, in your opinion? What year?
Tricky. I mean, I've been going through these. I mean, year 2000 was a highlight. 2006, just reminiscing on that. That was very good. And probably the one we just done, to be fair. And knowing now what we know, that it could be the last for a while, but certainly last until we resume. Very satisfying. So yeah, 2000, 2006 and 2019 equally, I'd say.
Fabulous. And final question before we let you go, Stuart. Over all of the years of your job, what's the most hair? Do you know, like when the hair stands up on the back of your neck with like pride, or if you could pick one moment where you maybe looked out at the championship and like what you've been doing as a job, and what is there like a particularly hair standing up on the back of the neck moment?
Yeah, I think the first time the first Aston event, that was a big thing. I thought, that was just a big statement for the championship. I know it proved a bit controversial, it probably remains so, but that was people said it'd be an absolute flop. No one would come and watch it. Race to be off it. It looked like a duck out of water, and it was absolutely fabulous, and it's grown ever since. And so that's probably my best.
Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant.
Well, we're just left to say, Stuart, thanks so much for your time. Really, really appreciate you joining us on the podcast. And obviously, we'll all hope that we'll be back sometime soon. But whenever it's the right decision to get back to the racing, we'll really looking forward to it, and we'll hope to catch up sometime soon. So thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. No, you're doing a great job as well. This is exactly what the fans need at this time. So thank you very well done.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Catch up soon.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
So really appreciate Stuart's time to come on the podcast. He actually sent a message through towards the end of that that he had to shoot off for something else. So really appreciate his squeezing us in, and he's a very busy man. So yeah, it's funny because out of all of the interviews we've done, usually I feel like very relaxed and kind of,
because we're normally talking over riders, aren't we? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and where I sort of do see Stuart as the headmaster of BSB, and it's that there's that. I actually felt quite under pressure for that interview, which is not usual, but I hope. Well, I was pleased with the questions that were put to him and his answers, and I hope that it wasn't like one of those funny podcasts that with like jokes and whatever. But hopefully it was really interesting and got some serious questions and answers.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, what I like about him is that he's definitely not a man to hide behind anything, and I think you got he did generally get such honest answers from him, but also you could actually hear the hope in his voice. He's talking about, look, it is going to be fine, and he's so complimentary to the whole paddock, isn't he? Mm-hmm. The fact of the survival attitude. We're going to keep going because everyone wants to keep going, and I think quite like at the moment he's definitely the man to do it. He really inspires that confidence.
Well, like I say, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, BSB's been pioneers in terms of saving money, creating entertainment. Obviously, like the showdown system, the one bike rule, the cap and the electronics, the single tyre rules. Mm-hmm. It's always been things, trying to minimise costs for maximum entertainment. And this is going to be the biggest test of all with this recession and obviously the times. So it's a lot of teams are going to be losing sponsors. A lot of the younger classes, and it's but I am very hopeful that we've got such a a dynamic leader and hopefully he'll be able to come up with some good solutions. And when the time's right, we'll be back out burning some rubber.
Damn right, young'un. Damn right. So yeah.
Anyway,
absolutely awesome.
You got much on this week?
No, just like I say, I keep saying this every pod. I'm very lucky that I even get the odd day here or there. But at the moment I've run out of work, but I'm not the only one in that boat. But it's no, I tell you who has been busy. Our little piggy, mind. Because I haven't now. That's terrible. Obviously, he's a huge listener to our show, and I haven't heard anything from him. I haven't texted him, but you've been in touch, haven't you?
Well, do you know that rower that I sold the other week on eBay? The last time I mentioned it on the podcast, I bought it for £650.
Okay, hold on.
The brand new price.
Let's not rub people's noses.
The brand new price is £850.
Yeah.
And I'd paid £650 for this second-hand one. Used it for 3 years, and I just seen that the price had skyrocketed on eBay. So I stuck it on for £1,000. Straight away, got it bid, and then you never guess what it ended up going for.
Well, I can imagine it being a lot more with your smile on your face.
$1,550 plus postage and packaging. So it's
holy monkey.
Yeah, big old wedge. But obviously I can't use it anyway with my shoulder. So I'll even if I get one again.
So hold on. My question to you, son. My question to you, son, was about Piggy. So hold on. Have you got that hay bale on feet on a rowing machine? You wouldn't be able to hit the bloody pedals, man.
On that topic. So anyway, I dropped it off down. It was near Birmingham, Staffordshire, and then on the way back, I was actually going past Piggy's house. So I dropped in, and we had our socially distance little chat, little catch up, and great to see him. He's keeping busy. He's got some essential work, so he's managing to work through it. And I tell you what, he looks like he's had a month in the Caribbean. He's got literally a tan to die for.
He looks like a leather boot.
So no, he's doing brilliant, and it was so nice to see him because obviously, on and off the season, I get to see him every month or every few weeks. So I really do miss him. But it was great to catch up.
Shout out to Piggy.
Shout out to Piggy. Other than that, I feel over the last few weeks, it's kind of dawning on us how much. Obviously, I know how big racing is in my life and how important it is for keeping us motivated and to have something to work towards. And I spend my whole life focusing on racing. That this sort of time it's given us the chance to sort of step back, and I just feel so lost and so empty without bike racing. And I presume loads of people will be feeling the same. But you literally, as bike racers, you just spend your whole life, one round to the next round, prepping, getting this sorted, getting that sorted, and I'm really starting to miss it, to be honest. I really can't. I can't wait.
You and me and all the listeners,
And I feel like, do you know that famous saying about everything in between racing's just waiting? What's the famous saying? Racing is life. Everything in between is just waiting.
Yeah,
something like that. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm on standby and I'm surviving, basically.
Mate, right. My fear in life is being normal, and this is as close as I'm ever going to be to normal. And I'm telling you what, when the world gets rebalanced, I promise everyone, I'm never going to be normal. Never going to be normal.
It's it is.
Good God.
The first couple of weeks, I was seeing it as a real blessing, just to have some time, just to relax and nothing. Where it's kind of it's really catching up on us, and I'm getting a bit frustrated. I'm getting a bit sort of cabin
edged
fever
up.
And I need to get out on a motorcycle sometime soon.
I tell you what, this podcast has turned into a therapy session. Tell me how you really feel, Chrissy.
Instead of telling me, speaking of therapy, I've been watching what's it called? Afterlife. Do you know on Netflix? Ricky Gervais. There's a scene every episode. There's a scene to do with he goes for therapy. One of the actors, and honestly, it is hilarious. Definitely put that on your Netflix if you're listening and you want something to watch. Definitely stick that on Netflix. Biggest thing on Netflix at the moment. I've also been watching The Pharmacist. I've finished that. That was quite interesting. Have you been watching any box sets or anything?
Not a bleeding thing. No, obviously just been cracking on and that. Just sort of, a lot of work trying to get ahead of myself, but no Netflix stuff. I've ran out. No, I've ran out, to be fair. And obviously just trying to, just keep myself busy, man. I went to see my mum and dad the other day, and we've been tarting on with me and my dad, like, have been tarting on with the little pit bike. I've got the little side motor I've got, and I'm falling in love with that, like, playing on with little things. But, like, I was up on the roof bleaching, like, at the top, like, my mum and dad's house, bleaching the gutters, getting the mould off, and then a bit of water, and 50-50 water and bleach, and, like, getting, like, something to do. You know what I mean?
I forgot to mention this.
Chrissy, we're going to have to wrap this up, mate. We're having a proper chinwag here, right? Come on.
Last thing, mate. I've the other day, I was thinking of stuff to do, and I've actually got the first motorcycle that I was bought for Christmas in 2002, so I was 7 years old, and it was a little Malaguti 50. Loads of people have started out on the same bike, and I used to ride it just near where we live, and, like, it's there's so many, like, sentimental, memories with that motorcycle. And I thought, we've always had it in boxes in the shed, and I thought myself, with this time, why don't I get it out, strip it down, get it all mint and get it running again. And so I went to look for it, and I wasn't in the shed, wasn't in the garage, couldn't find it anywhere. Anyway, do you know the race winner at Donington Park last year? As a special present, my mum and dad sent the Malaguti off in bits to get it all restored. So I'm actually getting my first ever bike back, fully restored. So that's getting done at the moment. I cannot wait to get it back. What was your first ever bike?
Oh, Charlotte. She was a good girl. God, Bennett. Oh, no, sorry, no. Obviously, I know the bike. It was a Yamaha 4-stroke 125 engine, but I'm trying to remember. It was a CH Racing. It was like a Husqvarna crossbreed. It was like a special anyway, it was a special mix to make this bike, and I remember buying it at Westgate Road. Absolutely loved the thing. I went to work every day. I used to literally bungee wrap my chainsaw to the back of the mud guard, going down the road with a fuel can and a chainsaw after work. I used to ride in the snow and everything. But no, I sold it to some local Raji down the road, and it just got trashed. It was you know what I mean? Like, I remember driving by the house one day, and I saw the bike on its side, just left there. Anything. I looked after that thing with an inch of my life, but I don't like selling things. You know what I mean? You get something, you buy, you've worked your ass off to pay for something, and you just can't, right, I'm going to look after this. And very, very rarely do I sell something. Very rarely do I sell something, and I find it very difficult. Very difficult to do that. But no, I'll have to dig out some photos of that thing. Absolutely loved
definitely.
it.
Well,
absolutely loved
tell you what, before we go, last episode we mentioned that we would run in a competition for the Billy Art. It's a A3 artist proof a drawing of Chris Walker on the B-Wiser Kawasaki. So we did if you shared it across Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. For this one, I picked Facebook, and the winner of that one is Stephen Bullis. So I'll get in touch on Facebook and post that down. But massive thank you for everyone who shared it across all the platforms. Really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, yeah.
And we've had a really good... The last few podcasts, we've had a really good response. I think with everyone being in lockdown, probably out of boredom, people are listening, but we're doing really well with the downloads and stuff. So really appreciate for that. And everyone who's leaving the 5-star reviews, again, it really helps us lift in the podcast tables. So huge thanks to that.
Keep them coming.
Massive thank you to all of our patrons as well. Really
our
appreciate
loyal
that
patrons.
Support. And we had some really good questions on the... for each podcast, I put as one of the special... things to be a patron is that you get to find out the guests that are coming on and get to ask questions. So we've had loads of really good questions for the last few, and which we get to put to the things. I'll just say Keith Fletcher, Russell McGill, Ben Wrench, Sniff and Skid Marks, Mark Reynolds and David Young. So they post questions for the last one. Really appreciate that. And obviously, massive thank you to our sponsor, KRG Motorcycles. And like I say, that TV will come in very handy, and we'll mount it with pride in our new studio.
We'll mount it with pride.
Yes. But any more crack for the week?
No, obviously we've got another guest lined up, which I'm looking forward to interviewing that one, which is very soon. So yeah, hey, till next time, Chrissy, my man. Till next time.
Take care, mate. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, mate.